Today we're going to be refinishing some cabinets and a vanity in a bathroom. As you can see, I've already removed all of the hardware and the doors from these. And on the vanity here, we may be replacing the countertop, we may not be. But we've already gone ahead and bagged and labeled all the hardware for all the doors and gotten all the doors off of these and ready for prep work. So we're going to go ahead and remove all of the knobs and the hardware from these doors and the drawers and then start getting them sanded. What we're going to be using is a battery powered hand sander for the most part. If you can see, these doors are pretty flat. There's not a lot of curves and such. For some areas we'll need to sand by hand or with a block sander. For the most part we're just going to be using the battery powered guy here to make things a little bit quicker. I'm going to be starting with 150 grit and then going to 220 or 240 to finish them up and get the surfaces nice and smooth. For the corners and such, we're going to be using some scuffing pads, some 3M fine scuffing pads, and then you also want to have a scraper handy so that you can scrape off anything that's on there from over the years, any sort of stains or gunk that's stuck on the surface of the wood. For paint, we're going to be starting with the Zinsser BIN primer. This is a great primer to give it a good seal and a base to paint on. And then we're going to be using the Berry Urethane Alkyd Satin Enamel. A lot of folks use the semi-gloss. I'm not a fan of the semi-gloss. I like the finish of the satin much better, and it's still a nice solid surface and easy to clean. And then to degloss and clean the surfaces after the sanding, we're going to be using the TSP. This is the concentrate, so you want to mix it with water. This is enough to make 4 gallons. We're going to make a little bit more concentrated than that, just so that we have a good solvent to clean with. So as you can see, I numbered the cabinet doors and then also numbered Ziploc bags for each cabinet door to identify which hinges and everything went to which door. These doors that have a bottom and a top hinge, I also labeled with a Sharpie on the hinges themselves. For example, this one would be number 3 bottom, number 3 top, so that the reassembly goes much faster and smoother. This door, for example, has 3 hinges, as you can see the hinge holes there. So this door being number 7, I labeled the baggies, the Ziplocs, number 7 bottom, number 7 middle, number 7 top for each of the hinges with a Sharpie to make sure that the hinges go back in the same spot, so there's as little adjustment as necessary when things go back on. So we're going to go ahead and remove all of the knobs that are left on here and get them ready to start sanding. Now once you get all the knobs off, make sure that you bag them as well if you're going to reuse them. In this case, I'm not going to be reusing the knobs, so these will be put aside and stored for later on if we ever want to use them for a different project. On any drawers, make sure to remove the rails as well, and then any of the screws that you have, make sure to bag them along with the rails so you know which ones go with them. And if it's your first time doing this, don't be afraid to take some photos of the hardware before you take the hardware off of the drawers or any other parts of the cabinetry. It's always easy to refer back to photographs to use as reference when you're reassembling things. Now with the face of the drawers, sometimes they're glued and screwed on, and sometimes they're just screwed on. With this one, it looks like it's just screwed on, so I'm going to go ahead and actually remove the face of the drawer from the body, and that way it'll make the prep work a little bit easier, and we'll be able to get a better finish on everything. And there we go. The face of that drawer is off. As you can tell, when they did assemble this guy first with the previous build, the face was more than likely attached when they applied the finish on here. So we're going to go ahead and do that off the body and then reassemble it after we're all done. Now, a lot of cabinet doors, people put these little bump stops on them, which is fine when you have them in place and you're using them. Just makes it a little bit more gentle to close. You want to make sure to get these off before you start any sort of sanding or finishing work, the easiest way is just to use one of these scrapers, and they should come right off with a little bit of force. You just want to get it there, get the adhesive, and they come right off. So make sure to get all those off, and then once that's done, we should be ready to start sanding down our doors, and then we'll go at it with the TSP to deglaze them and get all the grease and the stains and everything off, and then give them a nice wipe down, get all the dust off with a vacuum and wipe them down with some tack cloth, and then go through and make sure everything is clean and ready to go. So we'll get through those next pieces of the process here in just a second. So now we're going to get started sanding these surfaces. We're starting with the 150 grit here. Don't put a whole lot of pressure on the sander. You just want to go over nice and smoothly, try to get most of the glossy finish off and the surface stains, and get a nice even finish. So that took maybe 20 seconds or so, very quick. We want to get a nice smooth surface. Make sure to put your hand across it afterwards, see if there's any ridges anywhere, any sort of bumps, and just make sure you get it smooth overall. So now we're going to go through to the other side, and don't forget the edges as well. And then this piece should be done and ready to put aside and move on to the next one. The other side's all finished. Literally took maybe another 15-20 seconds, and we'll do the edges, and this piece will be done. And that's it. This piece is done, and I'm actually pretty happy with the way the 150 grit is going through the finish. So might not even go to the 250 or the 240 grit. We'll see once we get them cleaned up. But now we're going to get these other pieces done, and then see what we need to do as far as additional prep work, and move on from there. Now you'll see that my number 2 written on there, I'm going to sand it off here. So what I'm going to do is, as I get these sanded and finished, I'm going to keep them in order so that I know which door is which. And when they go back on, they go in the right places. So this is number 2. I'm going to set it second in line, and then so on. And that's it. This door is finished and ready to put aside and then clean up after we're done sanding all the doors. Again, this is a really quick process. You don't want to take off a lot of material. All you want to do is get the top layer off, scuff it up a little bit, get any stains off that are clumping up on top of the paint, and then get it ready to start degreasing. For this particular door, it took me about 1.5 minutes, maybe 2 minutes tops. So make sure you have good sandpaper. Your sandpaper's clean. If you need to swap it out, if you go through too many doors and it's getting clumped up, make sure you get clean sandpaper on your sander here, and it should go pretty quickly. With doors that have more engraving and detail work, it might take a little bit longer to do the edges by hand, but these are fairly flat, so they've gone fairly fast. So I'm going to rush through the rest of these real quickly, and then I'll show you the next steps here in a minute. As you can see, we've went through this sandpaper pretty well. This one's all done and we've got to replace it with a new piece. One thing to note, make sure you have enough supplies on hand. This is the second piece of sandpaper so far, and we have done 3 doors there, and this is the 4th one, and we've got a total of 8 doors. So I'd say about 2.5 doors per piece of sandpaper with this particular brand. It's the Diablo 150 grit that we're using. Some sandpaper will last longer, some you'll need to replace more often. It also depends on how much pressure you're putting on the sander and how much material you're actually trying to take off, depending on the condition of the old surfaces. These cabinets are about 22 years old, so they've had a bit of age on them. They have several layers of finish on them from over the years, probably I'd say 2-3 layers or so from being recoated with different glosses and oils and urethanes over the years. So we're going through maybe a little bit more than you would if you had newer cabinets, but make sure to have enough supplies on hand. For all of these doors here, we'll probably go through a total of 4 sheets of this particular sandpaper, and then for the cabinet bodies inside, we'll probably go through another 4 sheets or so. All right, so all the doors, the drawer shell, the drawer face, everything is sanded. On the edges, the backs, the fronts, all the little corners and nooks and crannies, everything's sanded. Now we're going to wipe them down. I'm going to mix a little bit of the TSP with some water and use some rags to wipe everything down right after we vacuum. So first we're going to vacuum all the dust off that we can, then the TSP. We're going to let them dry. We're going to wipe down with TSP one more time and then just a damp cloth. All right, so now everything is vacuumed up, and we're going to go ahead and mix some of the TSP with some water and get them wiped down. Now we want to make our cleaning and degreasing, deglossing solution. So what I've got here is TSP, liquid TSP concentrate. I've got, give or take, about a gallon of water in the bucket here, and we're going to add, this is a 32 ounce bottle of TSP. We're going to add about 8 ounces to the water here. Make sure you have water first and then add the chemicals. Never add water to chemicals. Always add chemicals to water. So we want about a quarter of this bottle in there. A little bit more. That should be about right. We'll want to shake it up a little bit, make sure it's nice and mixed. And I usually give this about 2 minutes to settle and get the water mixed with the TSP pretty well, and then give it another shake before we're ready to use it. Just use regular terry cloths. You can get them in large packages of 50 or 100 at most hardware stores. And what we want to do is take the cloth and fold it here. I usually fold it in fourths. Fold it one more time, and then dip it and wipe down the cabinets. And make sure you have a clean surface. As the surfaces get dirty, fold it the other direction, get a clean surface, and so on. All right, we're gonna get a little bit of liquid there. Squeeze out the excess. And these cabinet doors, all we've done is vacuum them. Haven't wiped them down or anything, so we want to go through and wipe them with the TSP solution that we just made. Get all the additional, you can see a little bit of gunk there on the towel coming off there. And make sure everything nice and clean. Any sort of dust is taken off, and any sort of stains or anything has been removed from the wood. That way our primer has a nice clean surface to bond to, so that we get the best adhesion and then also the best finish for the top coat. There you go. This one is wiped down with TSP, all the cracks, the little crevices in between the trim pieces and everything. What we're going to do is let it sit, flip it over, and do the other side, do the rest of these pieces, and then we're going to come back and wipe everything down with just a damp cloth that's been dampened with water, just water, nothing else. After you're done wiping them down with the TSP solution and also a damp water cloth, make sure to stand them up against either the wall or the garage door somewhere so that air circulates all the way around them to get the wood as dry as possible. And once you're at this point, next thing I'm going to do, and I'd recommend you doing, is going inside and starting to do all the prep work on the framing of the cabinetry. So now we're getting ready to start sanding and prepping the frames of the cabinetry in the bathroom and also the vanity. We're going to start with the 150 grit sandpaper, and then if it needs more, we'll go back with some 220 or 240 grit in order to smooth things out. Same process, sand and then vacuum, and then wipe down with the TSP solution, and then finish it off with a damp cloth. So we've got the outer frame sanded down. We haven't done any cleanup yet. One word of advice: wear a mask, or if you're going to be in a space where you don't feel comfortable wearing a mask, make sure to have a vacuum in one hand, sander in the other hand, so that you vacuum up all the dust as you go. That way your work area stays clean. If it's an open area, in this case, we can close this door, and it's not a very big bathroom, so we don't have the vacuum running in here, but I definitely am wearing a mask because it's fairly dusty in here with all of the sanding going on. So a few of these shelves do come out. This one here, this one, and obviously the center shelf is built in. So what we're going to do is pull those shelves out, sand those separately in the garage, and then sand everything that is not removable here in the bathroom as we go. Alright, this section of the cabinet framing is all sanded and ready to clean up. We're going to move on to the vanity, get that sanded down, and then we'll vacuum all the different sections and vacuum the entire bathroom since there's wood dust everywhere, and then come back and wipe everything down with a TSP solution, and then finally with the damp rag to get everything as clean as possible. And then we'll go through the next step here in just a second. Alright, we've got the vanity all sanded down too, and we're going to get it all vacuumed up. And then once we've got the majority of the sawdust vacuumed, then we're going to go back and wipe it down with the TSP solution and go from there. We've got everything vacuumed up and clean, and we're ready to start getting everything wiped down. Up until this point, between getting the doors sanded and cleaned and getting these two frames sanded and cleaned, it's been about 3 hours, give or take, and I've taken my time and made sure to get every little detail everywhere. So about 3 hours to give you an idea of how much time it's taken. And then we've got probably, I would say, about 1 more hour of cleaning and wiping down to do. And then after that, probably about 2 to 3 hours worth of prep work as far as masking and getting everything covered up that is not going to get paint, to make sure we don't get paint anywhere we don't want. And then finally we're going to get to the priming and painting stages. So all in all, I would say somewhere around 6 to 8 hours for disassembly, sanding, cleaning, prep work of everything, and getting everything wiped down and perfectly clean is probably what you can count on for this size project. If it was just the vanity and not the wall cabinets, it would probably be about half that time. So next we're going to get these wiped down with a TSP solution and then go on from there. And don't forget to sand down and prep your shelves as well. We've got 5 out of the 6 here sanded down. We're going to get the last one done and then wipe everything down and get them ready. Alright, so we're ready to start painting the cabinet doors, shelves, and all the different pieces that have come off drawers as well. So outside there's a lot of bugs right now, a lot of pollen in the air. So what I've done is make a small paint booth here in the garage, used in 10 by 10 Easy Up canopy, and then covered it with some 6mm plastic. And as you can see, it's fully covered. Made sure to overlap the plastic on each of the sections that ends up cutting off. And we've got a pretty decent sized paint booth to be able to do our spraying in. It's going to allow us to have a nice finish without any sort of dust or particles or bugs or anything sticking. Now, if you're going to build one of these yourself for your own use, you don't want to use the tape to hold the plastic up. What you want to do is use clamps to hold the plastic up. And once you've clamped everything in place, tape the plastic onto the canopy so that you don't have paint dust escaping from those openings. So clamp it to keep the plastic in place and then tape it off to seal everything. And inside, as you can see, I've hung the doors here. So take some of these small hooks that you can get fairly inexpensively from the hardware store, drill some tiny holes in a part of the shelves or the doors that aren't going to be seen after installation, screw them in, and then use hangers, and that way you'll be able to move these around really easily. You'll be able to hang them so you can paint all the different sides without having to move things around. And what I've hung them on here is just a little PVC stand at the bottom. Use the 3-way. This is 1-inch PVC, schedule 40. So at the bottom, use 3-way for the feet, and then come up and some 90-degree sections there at the top, and it looks like that's holding enough weight. I put 5 or 6 of them on there just to make sure the weight is being held correctly and it all looks good. So I've hung all my sections in here, just off the rack, so that I have them readily available to swap out and paint. And we're going to go ahead and get started with the paint. All right, we're going to be starting with our primer, our Zinsser BIN primer, and put 1 coat of primer on there, let it dry, and then we're going to put a 2nd coat on there to make sure we have good coverage if need be, and then let these dry probably overnight, and then go back the next day with the paint. The sprayer that I'm going to be using, I was going to use an airless sprayer, but since we've got a paint booth, not too concerned about overspray, so we're going to be using this Wagner Flexio 3000 HVLP spray gun, high volume, low pressure. We'll put down a much smoother coat than an airless sprayer will. So this should get us pretty good results here. I'm going to use it for the primer and the paint, using the larger bucket, not the fine tip, and it should make pretty quick work of this and also give us a really good smooth finish, almost OEM-like. All right, now that we've got a coat of primer on these shelves, we're going to relocate them to a hanging rack so that we can continue painting more stuff here in our paint booth. All right, I've got all these shelves hung on a bar here by our shoe rack. I just put the bar here on a shelf and the garage fridge and hung these on here. So we're going to let these hang here, and as they have time to dry, we're going to take this next set of shelves and, next set of doors, and also the drawer and the body, and prime those. So we've got the final coat on all these doors. This is after 24 hours of time for drying. The coat came out really nice. Looks like pretty much a factory finish. And I'll show you guys a little bit more detail here if I can get up close. Looks really good. I left the wood grain on there. I didn't sand it down too much. I want a little bit of the wood grain showing. And came out exactly how I wanted here. As you can see, it's got a really nice finish. It's going to end up looking really nice once everything is put back together. So I did end up changing spray guns. I put the primer on with the Wagner HVLP gun, but then when putting on the actual paint, I switched over to a Graco airless spray gun, and it worked out much better. Alright, and here's the finished product. It's a little bit hard to see in the video, but it came out really nice. I went ahead and changed the handles to these nice 3-inch wide ones. That's the wall cabinets. There is cabinets here. And inside, you can see I painted the shell on the inside, all of the shelves pulled out and painted as well. Of course, pulled all the hardware off, labeled, and then put them back on, so there's no paint on any of the hardware. Nice and clean look. The sheets I used here to line the cabinets, I really like these. We have them all throughout the house. I'll put a link to those in the description. And it's hard to see in the video. Let me see. These little bump stops are by far the best that I've ever found. If you can see, there's a little tiny protrusion in the middle. That hits first. So if you slam the door or you let it go real hard, you have nice absorption. There's barely any sound when the doors close. It's really nice. I like those a lot more than the standard little round bumpers. I'll put a link to those in the description as well, along with the link to where I got the handles as well. Most of the stuff you can get online. I really like purchasing all this stuff online, and makes my life a lot easier. All in all, came out really nice. I'm really happy with the outcome here. I'll put links to all this stuff in the description for you guys. If you have any questions at all, please feel free to email or message me. Thanks. Hope you enjoyed.